Hello, hello, hello. Buenos tardes, días, mañanas, noches y tardes. Once more, a Caldo de Riza.
Yeah, buddy.
How's it going, everybody? We missed you. Did you miss us? I'm sure you did. I am Danny Archilla, and right next to me is my good friend and co-host, Mr.
Bryan TV.
Hey! And together we
Hello,
are two
everybody.
Colombian dudes that love to talk everything and anything that is Colombian.
There we go. I like that. That is a good mission statement.
That's our mission statement.
That's cool. Yeah. That
After a while,
kind of gives it a purpose.
We nailed it down. Yeah, we like talking about
Colombian things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is cool.
Absolutely.
You did it, man.
And even we like talking about Colombian things that haven't been done by Colombians per se, but about the Colombian people, so to speak. We're giving ourselves a little chance to review Narcos. Narcos Season 1, Episode 1. After all the hype has been said and the talk show appearances and the celebrities have been going on, plugging the show away, after all that's died down, we're jumping on the wagon because we feel like it's important to acknowledge the show exists, you know?
A lot of shows don't exist unless we acknowledge them. I mean, people keep talking about a show called Fringe, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, the significance about Narcos is that it essentially follows the wonderful misadventures of Pablo Escobar, one of the, for better or worse, most famous Colombians that have been out there in recent history. And I don't know,
generally just, a very influential guy, whether we like it or not, in Colombian history.
Whether we like it or not, he's around, he's a figure, and we're going to call him out on his bullshit.
I don't know about all that, but
I think so. Would you have thought, before we get into this, would you have thought if you were in his shoes, you would have been able to plan everything so sneakily as you could have, being a major shipper of cocaine?
I think once you start rising into those levels of malfeasance, let's call it, I think it really does become about, plata or plomo. It really, there's no...
A lot of plata.
Yeah, if you have enough money, you can pay anybody to do whatever you need to, and if that doesn't work, then,
Yeah.
And I don't think... without getting too much into it, but yeah, he doesn't really look like, or based off of things that I've read, he really was, like a no nonsense guy when it came to business. Yeah, and I don't think he was afraid to just leave it to those two distinctions, whereas other people might morally and ethically find another way to figure it out, right? But again, for someone who's in that position and who's making, they're making essentially almost $1 million a run, it really is as simple as they either take the money or we kill them. And I don't know if I could handle that because again, I didn't, I think this was a big reason as to why my mom didn't want me to be around any of this. Not just the fear of becoming something like this, but just the act of, getting caught in the crossfire while walking down, a street in Bogota.
That could have easily happened. Yeah.
And people who own properties, their families were getting kidnapped. And we're not even talking, Pablo Escobar wasn't going around and knocking on people's doors and kidnapping children. No, these are people who are so low on the ladder that it's if someone, things that never reach Escobar's ears, or maybe it did, every little small instant or every act of rebellion. We don't know. I mean, I don't know, so, but it is interesting, right? It's here we see it kind of glorified, which again, I don't know. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
So
yeah. So we started watching the first Narcos season with episode 1. And it kind of paints for us a picture of, there's something sinister happening underneath the lush background, the landscapes of our great country, Colombia. Being that, any young dude with a mustache and a button down could very easily be trading around kilos for cheap. And, I thought when watching the cold open for this show, because I watched this episode before, but that was like back in 2015, and I was bitter because they had a Brazilian play the main Colombian. Pablo Escobar was played by a Brazilian in this show. But I decided, suspend my disbelief. I did that, and I got into it. I was scrambling for finding out what was really wrong. I mean, when you let go of expectations, you kind of realize, okay, whatever. Maybe it's not perfect Colombian Spanish, but they're still speaking Spanish. It's like, all right, yeah, I guess I could see somebody, speaking like that with that type of dialect and that type of calm coolness, Combo that with the fact that they had this fictional DEA character made up, because I think a long time ago I read on Wikipedia that there was actually no DEA guy like that guy that was like being a narrator and hounding after Pablo Escobar. Not just one guy anyway.
It's like an amalgamation.
Exactly.
He's like when at the beginning when they go, some of this stuff has been fictionalized or names have been changed. It's very easy in that situation. To just
I like that they
combine.
did that. I like that they did like the disclaimer, because that shows that Netflix is trying to cover their ass by making sure none of Pablo's descendants are after them. So, but yeah, it was. I liked it, and I thought I wasn't going to, but honestly, it kind of gives off, that type of feel of like dark comedy, like heavy drama and action, similar to that of Wolf of Wall Street, So I like that. I like that they kind of gave like surrounding areas a chance to show, hey, this is how we were involved in the drug trade, starting off with La Cucaracha, who had his whole crew kicked out after they the firing squad was unleashed on him. He had to move to Colombia because he was like a cucaracha. He escaped by the skin of his teeth, and I thought that was cool because I've never wanted to visit it anywhere more than just the rest of South America. And it was from Peru, was it?
What's it again?
Cucaracha. Where was Cucaracha from? He was from Peru. So I don't think Peruvians are really like that. But how the show tackles what Colombia's part was in that big drug boom of the late 80s, early 90s, like that was cool, because to show what Colombia was all about, you had to show the surrounding areas. So everything from Cucaracha coming from Peru to all the humble beginnings of our DEA agent falling in love in Miami, Florida, to even the Brazilian bitches coming in out of nowhere and being offered as reward. Like it felt like they were creating a world, a world much bigger than just the jungles outside Medellin, And that was also an interesting part, the fact that the narrator, as American as he was, pronounced everything with a little bit of un accento, So
yeah,
I thought that was polite.
The first episode is basically introducing us to obviously all our major players, and again, the DEA guy who's being portrayed by a Ryan Gosling lookalike. He's tall, blonde. He keeps looking like Ryan Gosling in the right light.
He's a cop that's seen too much.
Well, yeah, and like we open up basically, with the cold open, preparation basically of taking down, a squad, a description of like the use of satellite phones and everything. And like it starts off already with the narration of a man who seems fed up with his own like government. He's like, they'll listen to you, or maybe, or part of it felt like that. Part of it just felt like he was just stating facts, and like,
Sure.
We open him basically on then intercepting, a radio call on where these, major hitmen are going to be. And, right as they're about to, right as they go through it and they shoot everything, bam, we're into the episode. And you don't open in on, I guess because there's just so much material of him out there already that and maybe it's down on a few episodes that we'll actually talk about his actual rise. But like when we get into it, it's we get into it. It's they introduce who are the other players in the
who are the other
cartel.
competitors that
And
Pablo.
you're learning history of the names of these people. Like those names aren't fake. The names that Luis Guzman plays a dude named Gacha, who's nicknamed El Mexicano. Like that's a legitimate dude.
And then you got the Ochoa family.
Yeah, this is all real, information and verifiable information, and walks us through that whole process of doing that. So and then you're in it, you're introduced to Pablo, right? And he's not, he's right at the beginning, in the middle of his moment, like hasn't really gotten a hold of La Cucaracha yet. And so it's like we're right there, and
but he's formidable, because
exactly.
he's got like the police on lock, he knows everything about them, from their names to who their families are to maybe even like what they want for Christmas. He's got his ear to the ground, and his gun in the air. That's just what I feel like. And it's so impressive how they just like very smoothly transition from that to him meeting Cucaracha, to Cucaracha seeing how much control he has over his people, to like, okay, then they meet the El León, the lion, right? And that guy's like the test dummy, essentially. He's the first one to really, in the lore of the show,
we also get a sense of just how
Florida.
much Pablo trusts his cousin. I think his name's Edward or something like that, or something. I don't know. I was looking it up right now. But their relationship is established very, very early as someone that Pablo, truly trusts.
Yeah.
And as the episode goes on, and they kind of go through the story of meeting him, explaining to him, the Cucaracha was telling him essentially it was like 10 cents on the whatever it is on the gram and everything. And Pablo explains to him, he's like, well, you don't have any vision. I'm talking about going to Miami.
Yeah.
I'm talking about taking it to America, and getting Americans hooked on this. And so it all kind of ramps up. It's very, it's very smooth. It was very stylish. It felt... they're shooting on site. I believe a majority of it was shot in Colombia.
It looks really good. I'll say that's one of my favorite parts. The setting.
It's very smooth though.
Yeah.
Like we haven't really seen a huge amount of wealth disparity. Like a lot. Like it's in the background a little bit, but it's really not. So far, the first episode, you're in it. It's very smooth. It's slick.
Mm-hmm.
Everything Pablo does is smooth and slick. And like, and he's very assertive. He's a formidable presence. And so it's like, again, we're getting a very stylized view of all this. So that to me is kind of one thing to keep in mind as we, as you're watching that first episode.
It's very glamorous, is what I said to Bryan. It's got like some sort of rags to riches feeling to it. I can't quite describe it much better than that, except that it feels like Pablo Escobar is so powerful, people are attracted to that power, and they're probably going to want to have a bit of that for themselves later on throughout the series. Again, I haven't watched the whole show, so we're making predictions at this point, but if this really is about all that has to do with like how instrumental he was in revolutionizing the drug trade, well, then it's going to have some stakes, and especially by the end of it, because we find out he's aware of the DEA agent, and he's like putting a hit out for him. So that's interesting. That's interesting that happens, and it's also interesting that all the major players that are like in the Colombian country, not only do they want a piece of this, they think they know what to do better with the drug than Pablo does. But Pablo knows the best, because it was like that one scene where when the government is finding like a small percentage of the cocaine, Pablo's still shipping in more. Even when the drastic and devastating scene happened where the pregnant woman died with the packets exploding inside her body, it's like, all right, well, that was a diversion. That was a distraction. in a
Well,
sense.
no, that was a mistake. I mean, but that's just that comes with it, right? You have to assume that at least 3 out of the 10 women that you pack full of kilos is gonna pop.
Yeah.
And the rest of them get through. It was all. There was so much of it that the idea of it's like give a penny, take a penny. Like 7-Eleven doesn't care about those pennies, right? Because they don't care. It's just there. You know what I mean? And that was what it was to them. 60 kilos was a penny. There was a full dollar already being moved in a whole nother spot. And it was just, the U.S. just wasn't ready for it. There was nothing up and ready to prevent. There were no studies. I mean, and what I enjoy is kind of like the process that they show us. They show us the scientists working with the rats. The scientist does a bump of the coke. They're showing us the process from in the jungles. The description of using the gasoline and the acid and the irony of la cucaracha being like it's all organic, it's all safe, it's all healthy, and right below him there's Peruvian marching powder getting dried out of a fucking what are they called? Wear dump cans. The cans that Donkey Kong threw, the biohazard
barrels,
and there's just a hollowed out barrel filled with a bunch of sticks, just old school, Indian shit, and it's like that was it. They took a bunch of leaves, and they turned it into an empire, and so I think watching it all unfold, the potatoes being used, the car being pulled out, the fact that everybody in, wherever he was, Antigua or Medellin or whatever it was, everybody knew what he was doing. It was like nobody had a problem with what he was doing. His mother didn't have a problem with it. His wife didn't have a problem with it.
They helped him.
Everybody was pitching in. Everybody was, everybody was having a good time. Again, very stylish. There's jokes being had. And it's interesting because it starts off very aggressively. The first 5 minutes it's guns but all of it, and you're pulled in, and then there isn't really anything too much until the very end, right? Because it's this whole time you're getting ramped up. Wow, it's so cool how he's doing it. Wow, so cool. That's all you're thinking as this is all ramping up. They're sneaking it in the cars, and then they're sneaking it in the trucks. And, there's, it's constantly upgrading, constantly moving. So it's very cool, very cool, very cool. And none of it really goes south until near the end. After Pablo realizes that La Cucaracha has been stealing from him and then basically gave him up to the officials, almost on a gamble, almost on almost underestimating how strong Pablo had really become, and that's gonna be his fatal error because he ends up dying at the end of the episode. But even with the DEA agent and his partner, the partner getting shot. The use of the actual assassin's name that is an actual real life assassin that he used, like a man who supposedly killed over 40 Colombian police, up to 220 actual people, and he's responsible for a bombing on a plane, killed 110 people on the plane. This is a man who, and again, cool, smooth, he gets out on bond, he gets moved out, everything's very cool. It's all very cool, and there's no. I don't feel like we've hit the harshness of anything yet. Everything's been very, but I'll be interested to see how smooth this is. How much more can I guess, what parts of the cartel can we avoid here? I guess what are we avoiding here?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'd even go as far as to say that at the present moment in time, my disbelief is so highly suspended because of how smooth the storytelling was. I don't know if I'm come across a question in myself to say whether or not I'm proud if I was living then and I knew Colombians that were doing all this crime. Because on the one hand, cocaine, fancy, flashy, fun, gets you tits and ass, sure, but people died for this shit, and it kind of, while it's a weird feeling for me to know that Colombians were once responsible for that, it's also that's not my future. It's not my family. That's not my friends. You know, like that was just a bad. That was just a bad moment for us. That was like a dark moment for being represented like that, because that's where everybody started to go ahead and make the assumptions that, oh, every Colombian knows what to do in that situation. No, we don't. I don't know what to fucking do. You know? So it's like, am I still proud to be a Colombian after watching that first episode? Yeah. Because, I don't know. I still feel sympathetic for these characters. I haven't seen the actual gruesomeness of their crimes. But that's what I said about The Sopranos, too, you know? And
yeah, I mean, it's a show. I mean, I can't really... To make an assumption or declaration based off of an episode of a show, whether I'm proud to be Colombian or not, is a little bit of a stretch for me personally. I mean, I'm not even sure what question you were asking.
Well, what I'm asking is, do you think you could connect with the hustle of these Colombians, these narcos, this is the title of the show, and probably be able to carry out the same actions under those type of circumstances while also disobeying your moral clock, you know?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it's all about the poverty line, right?
Yeah.
Like, it depends on how, like, you know, your family, you know, and my family, you know, it all depends on the poverty line, right? Like, it depends on how low we fall below the radar to the point where the government doesn't pay attention or really, you know, can't do much about it. So,
right.
I don't know enough about my own personal financial situation back then. I don't believe so, but we've seen plenty of cases here in America where the schools and whatever, we're first world country, and kids who have good homes and everything still end up, you know, going out there and, if anything, exceeding better at being pieces of shit or doing bad things, you know. And,
yeah.
And in in your mind, you're like, oh, well, these people are pieces of shit, right? They're like a blemish on, you know, the Colombian name, you know. But and I'm sure we're going to see it later on in the show, and we've read it before, and if you've done enough research about Pablo, then you know it's like there were large sections of the country that really supported him, that were behind him, you know, that like accepted these sacrifices, you know, that were being made in regards to like police officers and people who were trying to do the right thing, you know. And we're saying the same thing where it was like, well, I'm not necessarily doing part of this. This isn't, you know, this is a different set of people, you know, this is a different set of, you know, this is a different time. And so some people, you know, are probably super proud about it. You know what I mean? The way that there are like people who are still hyped about the Confederacy and like Robert E. Lee and shit. Like there are probably people who still really speak highly respectfully of Pablo Escobar. Like, and maybe out of fear, you know, but maybe we're genuinely because this man like built schools, you know, and like paid for things and bought huge sects of land. So obviously so that he could own it, you know, like we're not talking about like a saint here. We're talking about a guy who like ordered the deaths of tons of people and, you know, did a lot to harm stuff, but you know, he's a product of his environment, and he eventually had a choice, right? You know, everybody has a choice, you know, to do something, and he chose to do what he could, you know, where he could do it, giving food away, buying people things, doing stuff, you know. But at the end of the day, he's still who he is, right? He loves power, he loves money, he loves women.
The government failed so that he could succeed.
Yeah, you know, and we've talked about it before. Colombia has such a huge history of revolution amongst itself. Like, there's always a constant struggle, you know, between the government and you know, either the indigenous people or the, you know, like, you know, whoever it is. There's always, you know, there's always two sides. But as opposed to out here where there's Republicans and Democrats and people maybe yell at each other and cross the picket line and punch each other and throw a pepper can at the, you know, down there, there's no rules, right? Like, so it's like, if we don't have the money to do what we need to do, then we'll use guns. And so it's all about the poverty line. It's all about how bad it gets. Like, you know, once you get to the point where kids can't go to school or even the government can't afford to give food away at the schools, like, you know, when they have to start shutting major things down, no power, no electricity, like, you know, blackout hours, no internet, like shit that only the 1%ers will be able to do it. Like, you're more than likely going to see people here, you know, in other countries like that, like establish their own rules and be their own Pablo Escobars and like do what they need to do. And so it's like, are we ashamed of what happened? I don't know. Like, not really. Like, I'm not Pablo Escobar. Like, I'm not anybody. Like, you know, and I don't think anybody is as ignorant to be, or pardon me, I don't think anybody nowadays, and this may just because I'm in LA, I do, you know, back in the day especially, but I haven't been back home long enough or, you know, in a while. It's been like 5 or 6 years, you know. And maybe it's because that type of stuff goes out of the humor cycle as you get older. When you're younger, and it's like 10 to 20 or something like that, 25, right? It's like people, which is your age, basically. It's like the people you hang out with are young. Those people are screwing around and goofing off and doing shit like that. And so their experiences are mainly, based on their own form of media, which is, what you hate, the 90s version of Colombia, you know what I mean? Like the 80s version of Colombia, Miami Vice, hustling, like, death, killing, all that jazz. Like, that's what they saw, on the TVs and things.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can't sit here and be like, I'm ashamed to be Colombian, because I don't think I've ever really felt ashamed to be Colombian, even with as little that I understand about being Colombian. I've never felt ashamed.
Well, that's a good thing to know about yourself, to know that you don't feel shame.
And I don't know if I feel pride for this. I mean, there's something to be said to be proud about it. Like, I mean, this is a man who ruled half the world of drug cartels. Like, this is a man who, like, really dominated what he did and is, like, an unspeakable force. And for someone like me who, like, main objective is to do something along those lines without having to sacrifice or put my family in that type of danger, it's kind of like you have to admire those type of people. Like, you really have to, like, kind of look at it and just be like, as a person, like, if that dude had, let's say the government had done something or done the right thing, or he'd been born in a different era, that's a guy who would have ruled a kingdom. Like, that's a guy who would have, ran into battle onto the beaches. Like, that's a, you know what I mean? Like, that's a single forced, focused kind of person, who like really did what he said he was going to do, Olympic style, like really a man who, like, so, like, there is pride in that for me personally. Like, if we're going to get down in the nuts and guts of it, like, there's no pride in what he has done, but there is a pride in a sense to be like, well, that's one hardworking Colombian. Like, that goes to show you that even if it is just that, like, imagine what we do when we apply that to everything else. Like,
right.
When we apply that to, emeralds, and when we apply that to everything, and that environment is still around. It's still very much, because no matter what, no matter how good the Colombian technology gets, like, it won't be more than what the cartel can afford. And so at the end of the day, it's like, so what do you do, right? Well, maybe you just legalize it. Maybe you make a handshake. Maybe you take all of this cloak and dagger out. A lot of this show's narrative is based on the idea that he can buy his way out of anything. He can pay anybody in the government. He can do so. It's like, he wants to be the president of Colombia. Like, those are huge aspirations. Those are big things. Those are like, those are big things. And so it's like, at that point, what do you do, right? All of this is happening. Everybody knows what's happening. Within the first 15, 20 minutes of the show, everybody involved in the storyline knows exactly what is happening.
It's very clear cut.
Blown away. Nobody is mystified or, I can't believe that he does that. No, every single person knows. So it's like, why sit there and pretend? Why be ignorant? Why, there was such a fight about it at the beginning. It's almost like, imagine an alternative timeline where there was a handshake and there was a deal. And it was like, okay, well, here we go. This is what we're doing. Like, Colombia may have found its own peace within that time, may have been lucrative and, like, exploded. But, because enough people didn't get money, there was
right.
more, there was more bullets being shed than there was money. So,
yeah,
yeah. So what would you rate the episode if you were to give it 1 out of 5 kilos?
I'd say I'd give it about. I've gone through a total heel face turn. I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5.
Damn, what were you originally gonna give it?
0 out of 5.
Really?
Yeah, well, because it's just like, besides the whole thing that you made a really great point of.
My inspirational speech below your
It's
mind.
not even the inspirational speech, because to be honest, I felt like this even after, or even before I heard that, and when immediately after we watched the episode. Thank you. What it is that, I guess, take away the fact that this was made not by Caracol, but by Netflix. Take away the fact that the character wasn't portrayed by Carlos Vives. Take away the fact that, maybe there are some areas in that show that weren't even shot on location in Colombia, let alone Miami, Florida, which there most likely were. But it's damning, right? If they weren't. It'd be damning if they weren't. So I have to say about the show, I have to say this. Any attention is good attention. If this is the type of press that Colombia built up, so be it. We're certainly enjoying a lot of it now. I was just telling you before we started recording. I just found out that there's been like at least the first Colombian comedian on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, whose name escapes me, but I know it's something that actually is.
He brought something up that he didn't know.
Pedro, I think.
Oh boy.
I'm
gonna give it. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 kilos.
Pedro Gonzalez, that's his name. First Colombian comedian to perform the Late Show. You said 4?
I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5.
Wow. Well, what turned that into a 4?
I was expecting a little bit more music, like different. Like we heard maybe 2 songs.
I definitely
the main
thought
theme
I
song
heard
being
something.
sung, and then we heard in the restaurant at the beginning they were playing Arroyo, and that was very cool, very time appropriate, and then no more music. I'm hoping we'll get an increase on the music because I would love to hear more of that 90s Colombian.
We gotta get those needle drops.
I don't know it. I want
what you doing, Netflix? Bring in those needle drops. Let's hear some Colombian tunes.
What, like the local radio station's gonna be playing.
Yeah.
During a car ride, like that to me would be very like.
They did have that band play the song twice when Pablo Escobar found out from Cucaracha the whole thing about cocaine. And
right, that's what I'm saying. That was one of the other songs, which is the main theme song that gets played.
Although I don't know why they're dressed
hearing
like that. Yeah.
Then you're hearing the one in the restaurant, and then nothing else. And I was like, oh, like I hope they do better at that. Like I hope it's not just Latin guitar theme music. Like I don't want that. I want to hear. And I get it, right?
Maybe
that would
some
cost
bongos, some congas.
Yeah, that would cost $1,000 million, and that would suck. And I get that, but come on, give me a little bit more give me more of the 80s and 90s like rock and what else is happening in there, and like, play me more of that shit so that I can like Google it and go, oh, cool, like this is Colombian music that I should know. Like this is the Colombian music that my parents grew up on. To me, that's the most important. Like that's to me what's important about all of it is like what got played, what is there in the roots of it all, like what is it that connects me to the show other than the drug part of it.
I will say, I almost wonder, because I did mention how this was made by Netflix and not Caracol, so maybe Netflix just simply weren't aware of the other Colombian tunes back in the 80s and 90s.
Sense. Like,
well, no, but I'm saying this,
they're just cheap.
I'm saying this as a two-parter sentence. The second part of that sentence being, when we were looking at when you looked up Narcos in the Netflix search bar, there were other titles that had to do with cocaine, including one that my father told me a long time ago is much better than Narcos, and that's actually a Colombian biopic series about Pablo Escobar as well, but it was made by a Colombian production company. I think it was made by, I don't know if it was RCN or Caracol or what, but it was one of those guys. And I could tell because they always use, for their TV shows, they always use 60 frames per second. They never do the cinematic 24 or the somewhat passable 30. It always seems like to be at a faster frame rate when you put on a Colombian air. So those TV shows, I almost wonder maybe they have more Colombian music. Because it was available and they were aware. But I don't know if Netflix is. That's what I'm saying.
So that's 4 out of 5 kilos for me on my side.
9 kilos in total.
I think it's going to be interesting. I'm going to continue watching it.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep watching it, and then maybe what we could do, we both watch the rest of the season except for the finale.
And then watch the finale?
And then we have 2 episodes. We have one that talks about the whole arc.
Let's do 3. We'll do, this is the first one.
Yes.
Then we'll meet halfway up. We'll meet halfway, right?
Okay,
I got
10
episodes, we'll meet on episode 5.
Gotcha, yeah.
Be like, you're caught up on episode 5, right?
Yeah,
And then we'll be like, okay, cool. And then the 3rd episode, finale.
There we go. Yeah, we'll be better prepared.
Maybe we
with
live react.
I'd love to live react to the theme song right now. This theme song is staring me in the face here on the screen.
Maybe I'll edit it in.
Yeah.
Okay. Where can they find you?
Well, I mean, I'm just.
Do you have a hole in your pants?
You could find me at the tailor shop because I have a. Can the camera catch this? It's not nudity. It's just beige.
No, I can't see it.
It's right there. Right there.
Where can they find you?
They can find me in Los Angeles, California. I'm getting followed by a lot of burner babe accounts that want nothing more to do with me than to steal my credit
Steal
card
your
information
identity,
for sex videos. So let's just say I'm being a dormant volcano. All right.
You can find me at the real REEL_Bryan TV, and you can find all this stuff at bingeonthischannel.com. We got tons of videos up there, show dates for everybody involved in any of the shows, links to this, that, and the other, and the rest of our shows. And Danny, you have an Instagram page. For
Yeah, we have
right?
an Instagram page for it. I'm going
to
to start
posting stuff.
I know we're going to start posting things. It's going to happen, and it's gonna be great.
What's it called?
It's called Caldo de Riza Podcast. I think that's just a good title for now.
Good way to go, man.
Maybe
and
we can change the handle
thank
later.
you
I
to
don't know.
Danny for
you
the
to
original
Bryan.
logo art of Condorito and Mafalda.
Yeah.
A male Mafalda, I think, right?
You're the male Mafalda.
Is that how it worked out on that? So you're
Yeah.
Condorito?
I'm the regular Condorito, and you're just a manly Mafalda.
I'm a manly Mafalda. Yes, thank you for that art. I
Yeah.
love that art. If I were a dirty hippie, I would get that shit tattooed on me. And I might, when I get super old, that might just be a tattoo that
We should just get it tattooed like in the latter years of our lives. Or
That'd be cool.
Our days de dorado.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, you got this, Danny.
Al que no.
You got it. You got this,
Oh,
because you
man.
said you would remember it.
No, I know, but did you remember it?
I know it. I always know it. I'm the
keep
one who has to
forgetting it.
carry you.
All right, well, I'm going to say
Al
the last
que-
Al que.
No le gusta.
Dude, how do I keep forgetting this
How do you keep forgetting this? It's your sign off.
I know.
Al que no le gusta el caldo, se le
da tres tazas.
There you
Like
go.
learning how to
He's
walk.
so white. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right.